Right. Yeah, we're recording. Right, this is what is it? Documentary B2, AC4 and AC5. Number 1, AC4 documentary roles. Provide a definition for each role. Discuss the responsibilities. This includes pre-production, I need that, and post-production. Who do they communicate with and why? So director, number 1. Director, basically the main guy, does the main sort of, I guess, acting aspect of the film. Will, I guess, sort of is or he or she is mainly involved in what is happening. Like generally, is the main person on set who, I guess, organises quite a lot of, I guess, the emotion in a film. I'd like to put it that way. Has lots of input on the pre-production. Sorry, my bad. So yeah, they're very, very included in pre-production. Control quite a lot of what's happening within the set. And yeah, producer. Producer generally is the main sort of idea of where the films came from. I'm not sure if it's 100% accurate. However, I believe that they also, I think they give money as well to the production. I think that's true. I think, but yeah, they're quite involved all throughout the whole project. And yeah, DOP. I know this one. So DOP, Director of Photography, sort of gives the initial image, so works quite closely with the director in making sure that, I guess, whatever is happening through the camera is, one, possible, two, I guess it's mutually agreed on by those two, the director and the DOP. And I think as well, it also is a big factor when it comes to lighting, and how lighting is put into a scene, what sort of look it's going to have, and yeah, they work very closely with the director to make sure that everything runs smoothly when it comes to the camera. Editor is involved mainly with post-production, however it can be pre-production and production as well. I think a big role of the editor is to communicate with the guys that are doing production, and when the footage is done at the end of the day, where the footage is going, what's happening, and you know, someone who's editing will relay the information and have that information and be able to help whoever's actually doing the edit. And everything they do is put everything together, all the little clips, and yeah, so they make the final product. Camera operator operates the camera. Yeah, they work very closely with the director of photography in making sure everything's sort of where it needs to be. They work with the, I guess, the first assistant cameras, and make sure that, you know, the camera's alright, the camera's working through shots to check it through. And yeah, so camera operator. Sound supervisor, make sure the sound's alright. We'll choose a different way to sort of sound a scene if it's needed. They might do like a boom as one and then a lapel mic as a backup, and that's sort of their role. They control the sound and what's happening. And then a gaffer does all the lighting. I don't know if it comes under grips as well. I believe it does. So that comes under sort of stands and where things are going, how things are going to be sort of set up, and the work with, again, the DOP in making sure that lighting's set where it should be. That's that. Banging. My role. What was my role actually? My role was I was a camera operator with Ethan and Alex. Gaffer. We all sort of chipped in on sound, I guess, as well. And me and Ethan were shared DOP, but mainly I was the camera operator and the gaffer. Cool. Can you describe your involvement in the production of the documentary? Could you detail your responsibilities during the project and the individuals you communicated with along the roles? What professional competencies, I think that says, did you apply during the experience? What professional lingo did you apply during the production? How did this improve the efficiency of the production? So, my involvement in the project was quite, I guess, non-stop from start to finish. It was, I was sort of the one that took the idea of that was Liorge's in the sort of start, and I took it and basically said, right, let's see how possible this is. I'll speak to people I know, and we'll try and get some people to sort of help out with it and chip in with what we're doing. And then through that, I've spent a good couple of days trying to, I guess, find the right people, the right, I guess, sort of context for what we was trying to put out. We didn't want people that were very, not necessarily hidden, but we wanted people that were more open. And I knew the people straight away. I knew who was sort of needed, and luckily they all helped out, and we was able to create what was the documentary. Another way in production that I was very involved is, well, I guess it relates to pre-production as well, is the questions. We wanted sort of just to be able to get straight to the point without any of the waffling and any of that, so I worked quite closely with Liorge in making sure that all the questions were sort of set out in a way where we're just basically asking this, and then you say yes or no, and then context behind it, instead of, well, sometimes, and blah 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 blah, and then it goes on for ages, then all of a sudden you've done an interview for an hour. So doing that was definitely important. Being a gaffer again, very very fun role, I will say that. I think before this project I didn't think into lighting as much as I should have, and yeah, it was very interesting, very very fun to work with and mess about with, and seeing what sort of looks you can actually get from a project, and yeah, it was very fun, and that was quite nice. Camera wise, did a lot of the B-roll. When I was on the camera, Ethan was DOP. He told me what he wanted. I took it back for him. When I was DOP, he was on camera. We sort of know each other inside out when it comes to what we want to sort of film and what we want to get, and we work very well with each other, and yeah, it's great. My responsibilities during the project as an individual, as the individuals, you must communicate. Huh? Whoa. Could you detail your responsibilities during the project and the individuals you communicated with along their roles? Right. My responsibilities were making sure the clients were good to go, basically, making sure the clients were like actually up for it, picking the clients, making sure we're getting all the B-roll and the shots, and making sure everything sort of fits together, so not having random shots sort of thrown in with different shots, so sort of making that very apparent, and sticking with, say, gimbal when we're doing a gimbal scene, like when we're getting B-roll, making sure it fits with what we're trying to get. So if we're getting B-roll of, sort of, I guess, when we, okay, this is an example, when we was doing George's interview, there was quite a lot of sort of rigging and him putting up lights and putting things there, moving things about, and we were very, very like sudden to like just shoot handheld, because it gives a real feel of what was happening. I think if it was on a gimbal, have a different feel to it, and we didn't really want that feel. We wanted something different, and being in control of that and sort of seeing what fits the mood, that was very, very cool. And yeah, that was one of my responsibilities. What else was responsibility? Lighting, yeah, lighting. Not really much else to say about that. Making sure the lighting was alright, making sure it was set up properly, and that the stands weren't going to fall or anything was going to go wrong. Pretty much that, yeah. What professional? Not a clue what that word says or means. Competencies did you develop during this experience? I guess that means what professional behaviours in some sort of context, I guess, hopefully. So I think some of the skills that I developed along the way were sort of figuring out lighting to a bigger standard. I've never really dwelled into it as much as when I was shooting this, and sort of working with it 24/7 from the start of the shoot to the end of the shoot. I've definitely learned a lot. I learned a lot about sort of contrast and how it affects our view of a scene and how it perceives things, and different sort of colours and balances, and how a different sort of, I guess, colour can affect a scene, and what, like, I guess, colour grading actually does. And there was loads that I've learned and loads that I've took away from it. And I think every single shoot since then, I've always relied on lighting quite heavily to set the mood before I've even put a camera out. And yeah, so that was definitely something I've took away from it and something I've developed. Professional language. So when we, I guess with language, when we first sort of started off, we wanted to make sure everything was professional on emails and, you know, when we're communicating things as a group. And, you know, we're a very close group of friends anyway, so we're not scared to sort of say things as they are because no matter what, we're just trying to get the best product and trying to get something out looking brilliant. So when it was emails and that, it was very sort of professional, you know. We was very in contact with our clients and who we was filming for, and yeah, I think our emails prove that when we're there and we can actually structure this thing together. And, you know, language is a very big part of that, and how you sort of present yourself matters quite a lot. And when we're working with external people, it's very important that, you know, you're to a professional standard, and that's what we do. So yeah, I think as well trying to. So when we were shooting, there was like problems, and, you know, sometimes we'd just have someone sat there in the interview chair for like an extra 5 or 10 minutes, and I think communication also helped us then. So even if it was just Gadu speaking to them for 5 minutes while we try and sort this problem out with the camera, I think that also shows quite a lot of professionalism, and just showing that, you know, we can sort of improvise even though something's went wrong. We can almost divert their attention to it, and sort of they can just chill and relax while we're stressing and put things back to normal. But that's alright, you know, things happen like that on set, and yeah, so got to take that away from it. Number 3, asset management. How did you store and log your assets files? How did you ensure this was an organised or labelled way? So when it came to culling the footage, we had, I think, around about a terabyte of footage by the end of the shoot, which was a lot less than we actually thought we would. But yeah, so when it came to backing up, we were shooting on like 3 or 4 cameras a day. So there was a lot of footage to back up at some parts, or loads of different cameras, more so. And Ethan did it all. Ethan made sure everything was organised. He worked with Errol to make sure he knew, so when it came to editing, he had a clue what was happening. And yeah, so that was pretty much that. The way we labelled it, so we had our initial drive, and then we had a folder in it saying what our documentary was, which was Prove Them Wrong. And then in that we had every single day it was shot, and in the day, we didn't have every day we shot. We had every single thing that we had filmed in order, chronologically, and then in those folders we had every day it was shot and what camera it was, whether it was A or B, or yeah. So that was pretty much how we backed it up and made sure everything was organised. It worked perfectly fine, and in the end, it was brilliant. So yeah. 4, professional practice. How did you ensure your production and your personal contributions to production were conducted completely safely? Location scouting, risk assessments, following the risks assessments on set. So when it came to, I guess, when it came to doing our risk assessments and that, there wasn't a massive deal along with it, as we were only doing a couple of locations externally, which were my studio and a couple of the shots outside. So when we was out the front doing a couple of drone shots, and when we were out the back of Boa doing some guess, cutaways, and they were all safe. No one got hurt. There were risk assessments that were going with it. They were pretty basic, but there wasn't a lot of risk that could have happened. I think the worst thing that could have happened is like a car hit us when we was doing a road shot, or a wire trips or so. But we still made sure the risk assessments were done, and they were done to a professional standard. And yeah, everything was done very safely, especially when. So I should give a bit of context for this, but we was doing quite a lot of BTS while we was on set, just so we have something to refer back to basically, and make a video for ourselves. And the one shot we did a drone shot, and then we had another drone getting the BTS of the drone getting Liords doing a cutaway. And this was one of the things where I was like, alright, we do need, I guess, a risk assessment to basically say, look, we're going to be doing this. However, me and Ethan worked very closely to make sure that no drones hit, and nothing did. So yeah, that was that. Everything was good, and yeah, we're all still alive, so all good. AC4-5 communications, platform audience impact. To what extent does your product suit the platform it was intended for? What file type did you export in? And finally, and your final project, as and why. How does your music video appeal to your target audience? I don't think that applies. I think that's meant to say documentary. How does your documentary appeal to the secondary audience, and how? So, when it came to sort of suiting our project to a platform, we didn't want to keep it so secluded that it had to be just YouTube or just like Instagram or TikTok or something like that. We wanted to make it, I guess, variable for every single platform that we could, just to give it as much media spread as we would like. So doing this, we've made 2 versions of it. I don't know if the one version's finished, but we've made a vertical version as well, which then can be spread on TikTok and Facebook and everywhere. So there is 2 different versions. One like your 16:9, and then your other 9:16. Just so it's versatile throughout different platforms, and that it still looks as good as what it should. So that wasn't really a problem when it came to making sure it was suitable. I guess another way you could say it was suitable was making sure that there was no cursing or, I guess, rude content or anything like that, harm or whatever, and there definitely wasn't. It's very, very sort of nice and, I don't know how to describe it, like nice and just subtle and relaxed documentary, and it was very, very nice. And yeah, we exported the final cut as 4K DCI in 24 frames a second, and yeah, so it looks really nice, really clean, and it looks well produced and well put out, and really proud of it. In H.265 as well, and then I think when we done the vertical, we did it in 3.2K, I believe that's what it was. But yeah, that was that. How does your documentary appeal to your target audience? So our target audience was very vast. We wanted so many different people to sort of view it that you could relate to it no matter what age you was. So one of the ways we did it was including in our questions the older generation, and we go back to that quite a bit. So there was a stigma where, I guess, older generations and older people didn't really resonate with the idea of being freelance and putting yourself out there, and instead they want to be a bit more set on you go to uni and you become a doctor and a lawyer or whatever, and then that's that. So we wanted to sort of resonate with that, and if anyone of that older generation did watch this, they would be like, oh, okay, so there is a different sort of world. So we included that in our questions, and it did appeal with our target audience when we did the post-production. And then we also made it friendly enough, so if you're you know, if you're I guess a kid or a teenager, and like, you know, you was in that 13 above bracket, you could still watch this and not sort of blank the creative industry out as a whole because, you know, someone else has said to, and instead you can watch this and see people that are our age and how they're doing good in it, how they're successful, how things are going well, and that was the whole sort of point of it, and that's what we've been able to create. Yeah. 6 communication techniques. How did you achieve this using creative filmmaking, audio skills? How well did you convey the messages to your audience? What made your music? You keep saying music video. What made your documentary stand out to other documentaries within the same genre? So, I think when it comes to editing, there's so many different aspects. I think it's one of the most important things you can do when it comes to like creating something, because it doesn't matter what you're doing pre-production or production. If you have a crap product at the end of it but the most amazing camera work and amazing plan, then, you know, it doesn't really do it justice. So I think editing is such a big skill in its own that, you know, it can make a terrible product amazing. So one of the things that we focused on quite heavily was music, and luckily we have Leorge, who, you know, has produced songs for quite a while, and myself, who also has, and we were able to sort of get a feel for a certain scene and be able to go, all right, what sort of vibe does this give off? And by doing that, was able to go, okay, is it a major song or minor, or is it a quick tempo or slow? And we was able to sort of put them in there and it fit the mood, and you could change it up so much, and if we did the documentary again it would not be the same, and there's so many things that you could do different. However, we kept it we wanted it to have a meaningful message of you should come into the creative industries, even though, you know, sometimes things might not work out, but that's just life, isn't it? And to go with this, we put, like, I reckon if you put sad music over it, it would give a sad message, but we put very positive, like, music over it, so it gave a very strong, powerful and meaning message, and, you know, it would inspire instead of sort of deflate the audience. There were times where we did use a bit of, like, minor music, and that it felt right for the mood that we set out, but yeah, we wanted it to make quite an upstanding and sort of positive vibe when it comes to this industry, so that's what we did. We kept it very upbeat and very positive, so yeah. Some of the camera techniques we used, we kept it very, I guess, realistic as well as, I guess, cinematic, I would say. I don't know if that makes sense, but trying to keep that sort of documentary vibe where it's very handheld or shoulder rig, and you can sort of just feel like you're in that moment and you feel like you're a person watching this other person do their job, and that was very, very different for me. I would say it's something that I struggle to do quite a bit, purely for the fact that I'm always on a gimbal, but then at the end of the production, you know, I've realised I love actually shooting handheld, and it's something that I like to do. But then because I do wedding videos, it's very hard to go handheld because everything's so smooth and 60 frames per second, and, you know, you get very stuck in a way. But this sort of broke me away from that, and it was a very nice experience to sort of be a part of. But again, like I said, it was, you know, the footage sort of felt the vibe. So if we was doing a scene where it was very hands-on and we was, you know, watching someone build a rig or do some makeup or something like that, and they were moving about very quick, we had to move about very quick. There was no time for slow cinematic shots, like we had to adapt to our environment. However, then when it was doing my scene, when we were in my studio, we had more time to sort of work with, and it was very sort of relaxed and calm, and, you know, then we were on a gimbal and it fit the mood more. So I think working out what you need to do before you do it, that was very, very sort of apparent as well. and I think just knowing people and knowing what's going to happen before you go and shoot was a very important part of that, and you know, it helped in the end. What major documentaries stand out to other documentaries within the same genre? I guess having a very set goal would sway it. So instead of just telling a story, we're telling a story, but then keeping a point involved in that story. So the story is, say, Lara, who was like one of our interviewees. She had started as a musical theatre, and then she came into makeup, and now she's doing makeup all around the country, and like, it's brilliant. So then we were like, alright, how do we get this story, and then how do we add a solid point to it, which is, this is why you should join the industry, instead of like doing a different role. So we added questions that were very, not necessarily targeted, but they were very apparent that they were made just to sort of criticise the creative industry. So there were questions like, okay, that's brilliant, but how, like, not necessarily, but how. So say, one of the questions I do actually remember was, how did musical theatre lead up to makeup? And she's like, well, you know, I've just always had a passion for it. So we sort of deciphered the question, and then was like, alright, so do you think that being creative at the start, you know, being a creative and musical arts student, do you think that's also helped you propel to being more creative and doing makeup, and keeping that involved in the question, that creative and, you know, the industry? I think that's a very important thing, and keeping it solid. I think that's what makes it very different to other documentaries, and yeah, so that's what we've done in the end. And it worked, and it kept the point in the documentary across the whole documentary, so yeah. 7, rational and purpose. Did your documentary meet the expectations of your planning? Did it meet the expectations of your client? Did you make any creative changes in the final product compared to the planning stages? What codes and conventions did your documentary meet? Oh, excuse me. Our documentary definitely stuck to the plan we originally had, which was to create an informative documentary about the creative industries, and we did that very solidly. And you know, if you watch our documentary, you can see from start to finish we're on about the positive notes and what the creative industry is, and we explain it in a lot of detail, and it worked perfect. It definitely met to our planning. Our plan was to sort of tell it in a story, and we did that. And you know, looking back, there's so many things we could have done differently, and that if we did it again, we could do differently. But we love what our final product is, which is explaining the creative industries and what it has to offer and why you should join it. So yeah, that's that. Did you meet the expectations of your client? Definitely. Again, our client, you know, they wanted to create an informative documentary, and that's exactly what we do. Did you make any creative changes in the final product compared to the planning stages? We actually did. So initially we planned to have the documentary based around older groups, so people that do believe that, you know, the creative industry is sort of a pathway of like a negative downfall, because it's not a secure job like, you know, being a lawyer or doctor. So we was going to have it all based around that, but then when it got to the actual process, we realised that we could actually do it in a different way and have the youth sort of speak about it. And one way we did that was by using people from BOA, because they're creative students, and our aim is to inspire people to join, and I think they did a very good job of that, as they're, you know, they're very bright and positive people, and that sort of resonated with the documentary and what we did in the final product. But yeah, excuse me. Another way we did actually change the creativity in our documentary was that we went a bit off track with, I guess, how we was going to light things. Like initially we was just going to have one light, keep it as simple as we can, and then all of a sudden there was 3 lights, and then there was a 4th, and then there was like fake lights, and then there was just, you know, prosthetic lighting. There was loads, so we did go off track a bit, but it looked better, so it's a win-win basically. But yeah, what codes and conventions did your documentary meet? I think it met a load of standards, and it met with what we wanted it to do. So instead of it being just, you know, your bog standard documentary, just boring and yeah, basically, we wanted it to have a bit of power behind it, and sort of we want to push it. So including like animations into it, including, you know, quite inspiring music behind it, and, you know, a nice sounding voice instead of just a Brummy accent. There was loads of things that we did, and we thought it changed the whole perspective of what we were creating, and it did definitely do that. But yeah, so that was pretty much that. I don't believe there's any more questions. No, there's not. But yeah, that's B2 documentary AC4 and AC5. Thank you.